Welcome, everyone, to Blue Collar Startup, the podcast where hard work meets big ideas. This is your home for real talk, real stories, and real strategies from the front lines of life and the business of the trades. I'm one of your hosts, Mike Nelson from Five Towers Media.
And I'm your other host, Derek Foster of Daigle Cleaning Systems. What's going on, Mike?
Just another day in business land, Derek. It's one of those weeks, man, or maybe it's been one of those months. I'm not even sure, but we're moving and grooving and working till midnight, 1 o'clock every night, and back up at 5. So it's good times, fun had by all. How about
That's
you?
it. No, I'm good. Spent the first part of the week actually in Las Vegas, actually with our guest today. So we were at the ISSA show, the International Sanitary Supply Association, which kind of oversees the cleaning industry and
Mhm.
suppliers, vendors. So they do a huge show out there every year. This is my first time going in 15 years. So between the time change and taking the red eye flight Tuesday night, yesterday was a rough day. It was
Yeah,
very, I got through it, but it's good to be well rested and back at it. So a lot of
yeah.
good takeaways.
We were emailing back and forth and texting back and forth late Tuesday night. I think while were you on the plane while we were
Uh,
communicating?
yeah, I was at the airport, probably waiting for the plane. So,
Yeah,
but knock on wood, nothing got canceled. Everything worked out. So we're back and getting caught up.
back at it. All
That's
right.
it.
Well, let's get to work here. Real quick, let's give a shout out to our sponsors. Again, these people are amazing, and the support they provide us, allowing us to not only help produce the show, but also these folks, a good percentage of all the money that they give to us, we end up giving back to kids in the trades, tools and tuition with BOCES, Hudson Valley Community College. So real quick, real thank you and shout out to Peopleese and the team over there. Nick, thank you. Martin Electric, MLB Construction, Bonaccio Construction, Michael's Group, Catamount Consulting. Big shout out to Scott and Stacy. Appreciate all the help and support that they give. And of course, Derek and I wouldn't be anywhere without our team. So shout out to Derek's team over at Daigle Cleaning, and of course to our team over at Five Towers Media. So I'm excited about today's guest. I know you are too, Derek, because it's pretty close to home for some of the things that you're doing over at Daigle Cleaning. Uh, Bob, I don't want to. I have this thing with messing everybody's names up, even when they seem somewhat simple. So,
Yeah,
if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, Bob, who you are and your company and what you guys are doing over there.
sure. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Derek. My name is Bob Caldarella. I'm with a company called ClearFocus Robotics. We're headquartered here in Southern California, and we've got resellers and offices around the United States. What we're focused on is real work robotics for front of house applications across a couple of different vertical markets like healthcare, education, retail, hospitality, and I think under retail, maybe perhaps subcategories like C stores and quick serve and airports and commercial buildings. And we look for the right applications for these I call front of house robotics that help drive up workflow efficiencies and workforce effectiveness, delivering ROIs within the first year. And, real work, autonomous mobile robotics is our game. And that's what we're promoting.
Amazing. And you're in Southern California, which also sounds amazing because if you're watching this on YouTube or Rumble right now, you can see I got my
Yeah.
Jersen winter toque on
Uh,
here, and I'm in a flannel because it's freezing where I am, and our heating system is having some troubles right now, so it's a little chilly in this house. But
yeah, it's Southern California. We never talk about the weather. We don't want to bring the enthusiasm of any call down. And because the weather 72 and sunny around year round. It's
that
crazy.
sounds amazing. That sounds. I will say it did warm up here in northeastern New York. I think we're at like 48 degrees, 46 degrees right now. So it was certainly colder and wetter earlier. So we'll take it, I guess. But
Well, and at 30-second plug, I was born and raised in Brooklyn and raised in Long Island, and I'm in California 30 years, but I do appreciate the weather that you guys experience,
Yeah, you remember it, huh?
and the four seasons too. I mean, that's probably the best part, and that's one of the things I do miss being out here in California is the four seasons.
The change in seasons, yeah. So I know, for our listeners, real quick, I know we're talking robotics, but I promise there is a blue collar tie-in with what we're doing and a tie-in with the trades.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
a big one for that matter, and we can even use Derek and some of the things that he's doing over at his place as the example for that, the case study for that. So, Bob, maybe you can, before we get into some of the other questions, maybe just kind of touch on the work that you're doing specifically with the trades and kind of how you're supporting them with some of the robotics things that you have going on.
So again, like I said a little bit earlier, if I was to focus robotics, real work, autonomous robotics, um, into the workplace, I'd say that look, there's kind of back of house and front of house robotics that are prevalent in any environment today,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be commercial or industrial, retail, education, or whatever. Um, this constant challenge that whether it be white collar senior management, C-level management, or blue collar day to day getting tasks done, meeting SLAs, um, the constant is workflow efficiencies, and you're always challenged with uh, unplanned changes in either workforce shortages or situations that arise where you don't have the right person on the job or in the right environment, or somebody's pulled away to go do something else. It's all kind of task driven and I'd say task driven, but moreover priority driven.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Robotics takes that kind of pain and the uncertainty away from those unplanned tasks, right? In other words, I think that if you look at floor care just as a common example,
Mm-hmm.
a 100-yard or a 200-yard hallway, uh, that's a predictable yet mundane, repetitive task that has to be supported, maintained every day in some environments,
Mm-hmm.
hospitals and education and all that. If I can take that task and automate it with robotics, that allows blue collar workers on the job on the ground workers every day to streamline kind of their workflow and reprioritize their tasks, get their jobs done more efficiently, because some low risk, highly predictable, mundane task is taken over by a robot. That's where I think where robots cross over and they transcend from kind of back of house to front of house, and
Mm-hmm.
and it it addresses all of the current concerns, either white collar, blue collar, don't matter. I think that workflow efficiency and workforce effectiveness crosses over all roles and responsibilities in all environments.
Yeah. Yeah, I know we had Terry Hubbard from Peak Environmental on, God, it's been a few months ago now, huh, D?
Yeah, yeah, a
And
few months ago.
yeah, and he's integrated what we affectionately are calling the Mobots, where it's the units that are doing the mowing for his team.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And what he was saying is like, listen, he's like, integrating these Mobots into our workflow allowed my other team members to be able to focus on higher level detail work, hardscaping, whatever it's going to be. And they didn't have to worry about doing the mow and go. They got the Mobot to do that, and they can focus on higher detail work. Or like in Derek's scenario, and we can touch on that, which I'm now effectively calling the mop bot. So we got Mobots and we got mop bots. Um, I'm sure they do more than just, clean, mop, but it's, again, it is really kind of to your point, right? Taking some of those tasks that are mundane, not really a lot of job satisfaction in doing some of that stuff, and allowing team members to be able to do other things as well, not just increasing. Go ahead.
So there's three things that those tasks could, and we'll talk about this, as we go along here. Those tasks could be dangerous. Those tasks could lend or end up in a workman's comp case, and
Mm-hmm.
then nobody wins, right? So the predictability challenge is what robotics is about. Like for instance, and I didn't think about this until you just said it, in lawn care, if you have two parameters, moving targets. One is customer satisfaction and what they do when they're not satisfied, when
Mm-hmm.
they're disappointed with the work. Human nature. Human nature is this. If you have an unhappy experience, you will tell 17 people. That's the human nature, 17 people. If you had a pleasurable experience, you tell 9 people.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, firms that do commercial landscape or residential landscape, if in fact the customer's not happy and their party is on Saturday and the landscaper comes on Friday and this particular tree is not trimmed properly and it doesn't meet their expectation and they're not home and the landscaper comes and goes and the landscaper says, hey, I spent my 30 or 45 minutes that day on that property. What is better than maybe having an automated solution for the lawn, and then that 30 or 45 minutes is spent on, the meticulous care for certain trees and certain things, and that client comes home ready for this party, and they look at that tree and they say, wow, that tree's never looked as good as it does today.
Mm-hmm.
The reverse of that is they go to Yelp, and Yelp is not anybody's friend. And and so I say that all the time, and everybody laughs just like you do. It's a natural reaction because in healthcare, there are marketing departments responsible for, the marketing and the proliferation of goodwill and branding around a hospital, hospital organization. In one hospital here in California, out of 7 folks in the marketing department, 2 are dedicated to Yelp inbound. And the SLA around that is they've got to respond to a Yelp complaint within 1 hour.
Oh,
And
wow.
so that marketing person has to reach out to the doctor, reach out to the nurse, look at the records, look at the complaint, formulate a response, articulate that response in a favorable way, be factual, and send it along in 1 hour. So Yelp is never anybody's friend when it comes to customer responses, customer satisfaction. And
Mm-hmm.
I take that from a hospital environment and patient care to residential or commercial, property management and autonomous, mobile, lawnmower. Put it in place, have your folks, have the team focus on the more articulate, intricate detail, and you'll win that customer over every single time.
Yeah. I,
If I can, I just want to add to that too, Mike. So,
yeah.
on our end, from the customer service standpoint, and applying that to a scope of work that we typically, agree upon to meet a client's needs, we're now able to take the scope of work and handle a task like a detail vacuum that might be done twice a week. And now, without any additional, labor costs or anything else going into that, you can set that to 5 times a week with, zero additional burden on your end. So you increase that customer experience. And Bob, one thing that I wanted to ask you about, I know you mentioned the floor cleaning robots and UVC disinfection, but what are some of the other types of robots that are out there that are applicable to, the trades and blue collar industries that could help reduce that labor cost and increase efficiency and customer satisfaction?
Yeah, so I look at robotics kind of in two ways. I look at manufacturing robots, that are the cobots and robots that do manufacturing. And that's not what we're talking about today. What we're talking about today is really service robots. And kind of service robots, I then subcategorize as back of house and front of house, and some transition or crossover. Um, Categorically, service robots um, provide either in our case here at ClearFocus, room disinfection, floor care, secure delivery, and transportation. And transport covers actually a couple of different subcategories within itself. Heavy lift transport, and hazardous material transport. In terms of secure delivery, we're delivering in a more benign way. We're delivering gifts and services to guests in hospitality, but we're also delivering prescription medications to nursing stations or right to patient rooms. Again, secure delivery versus kind of transport. Um, and and so maybe one of the bigger, more integral applications, and I would, if you can, if we agree that by definition, a nurse is considered blue collar, or nursing staff or technicians within a hospital is considered blue collar. If you guys will follow me on that, then I would absolutely say front of house autonomous mobile robotic technology is lined up perfectly with blue collar task management. And that is this: in a typical hospital in 1 week, the transportation of blood samples from the emergency room to the lab, somebody walks 75 miles a week. That run, 75 miles a week. And if I can do that with a autonomous mobile robot that has elevator interface, secure door interface, and it's a secure delivery. In other words, I badge my way, open the door, put the blood sample in. It now knows that this person, this nurse, this tech, put the blood sample in at 12 o'clock. The door closes. The only way that door is opening is by the technician in the lab, 100 yards away, down a hallway and around a bend, maybe on a second floor, and it's open. That's secure. That's by definition secure delivery. By definition, that's blue collar work. And by definition, that's automating a low risk, highly important, secure delivery of 75 miles a week. Now, you can argue that, well, that might be not that secure. Well, I will tell you that it absolutely is secure, but moreover than that, it's extremely efficient and rewarding, because now the team can focus on other things that are patient related. So that's just a real life example, in front of house applications around autonomous mobile robotic technology. And again, there are others, and we'll talk about that as we go along here. But that is a real life example, and I think that's how it ties to blue collar, if you consider nurses and techs blue collar in hospitals. They're certainly not they're certainly not administration. They're certainly customer facing or patient facing, and I consider them blue collar all the way.
Absolutely. What I'm curious. It's Well, actually, to back up a little bit, Bob, how did you get into all of this?
I've been in the high tech electronics industry for 40 years. And the last thing I was doing, the company before I co-founded ClearFocus, I was building ATMs for a large banking ATM manufacturer, and we were their contract manufacturer. And it was not as rewarding as it sounds. When you contract manufacture, you, it's not your product, and
Mm-hmm.
when and so there's a huge disconnect between satisfaction, product and service satisfaction when the product's not necessarily yours and your brand. When you're a
Mm-hmm.
hired gun to build product. So as I was getting, you know, older in the electronics business, that was where to go. That was, go to contract manufacturing. That's where the big business is. But it's by far as rewarding as, real important stuff
Mm-hmm.
like saving lives with UVC disinfection robots or creating real efficiencies in workflow with the example I just gave you with secure delivery robotics. There's a lot of good, noble work to be done in healthcare, in education, in mainstream commercial applications. And so for the next 5 years, next 6 years, that's my goal is to do important things. But my background and my pedigree is all around uh, embedded computing technology, display technology, and it applies to robotics today. Every single day it applies.
What Obviously a lot of this is newer technology. You're on the front side of this. What do you see as some of the obstacles or challenges with the adoption of some of these robotic technologies, whether it's in the trades or really any other industry?
Yeah, so I see it's all subliminal. All of the barriers of entry are all subliminal, and that is, I've got union labor. How will I address that? I've got staff that I protect. I don't want to lose them. We've had robots in house from 5 years ago, and they're sitting collecting dust in a closet. Senior management doesn't get it. They don't understand it. How do I manage it? How do I create KPIs and how do I integrate into my workflow? Like superficial barriers of entry, I deal with them every single day, and I battle them and I address them articulately and professionally and respectfully on in every conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think that education is the key. And I will tell you that a perfect example is, when you present, whether you do a demo or a pilot or a POC in any environment, and you're addressing middle management, director level management, their biggest challenge is selling up to C-level management the need and their ability to articulate how to integrate robotics into their workflow. And
Mm-hmm.
so education up and education down is critical to the adoption of robotics in any environment. I don't care where. It's all about battling those common concerns around. I don't know if it's about change, but this is radical change, right? This
Mm-hmm.
is, you know, I always think about this as revolutionary technology in an evolutionary world. And bridging that gap is what Derek and I and my other partners do every single day, is bridge that gap, that knowledge gap.
Yeah, it's interesting because as you're talking about it, that was one of the questions that popped in my mind was, when does someone realize, like, hey, we should look at robotics for a part of this workflow that we have to see if there's an opportunity there, right? Because it's like most people don't know all the different robotics products that are on the market, like
Right.
just to name a few. Obviously, we talked about the Mobots, the Mop Bots. I know we have a client that has a robotic welder. So they're doing some robotic welding in-house. And looking at your website, you've got tons of robotic products on the website. So it's I it's something that's not talked about a lot. And to your point, education has got to be a huge piece of this. But like, how do you know, like, hey, I'm thinking about this workflow, I'm thinking about what we do, and I'm wondering if robotics can jump in here. What does that look like?
So, I lost my train of thought.
That's okay.
Okay,
I
so
do that all the time. So
because I was moving way too fast for the question. Let's strike this. Ask the question again. I have the answer, but I just completely lost my train of thought.
no, that's okay. Yeah, it's so I guess I talked a lot there too, but the main objective or the main point of the question is this: if how do I know that robotics may be helpful or an answer to a problem I have in a workflow? Like, how do I know that I should insert a robot here?
Okay, so I said that's the that's the that's a $64,000 question.
Yeah.
And so, and maybe that's the hinge to the education part.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know that there's a robot that will solve that problem.
Mm-hmm.
They're unaware. So human nature is, I've got a problem. I've got 3 people short. Everybody's on overtime. People are stressed out. This person just left on leave. They called in sick. They can't make it. They're not going to come to work. They just quit. The attrition rate is unbelievable at the blue collar level, at the task level, in any environment. Healthcare, education, doesn't matter. In education, there's an average of 11 staff recs open in any school at any time. They
Mm-hmm.
can't even hire folks. So they've got systemic problems in workflow, and they don't have the right staff, the wrong staff, not enough staff, not a willing staff, and they don't look at robotics as a solution until it's forced upon them, or until they sit and jump in on this podcast or these types of environments where they're open-minded, or they get lucky and somebody says, hey, did you look at this robot to help you out? It's human nature to solve your own problems with the known assets, the known entities, your own knowledge, your own base knowledge. Robots, when people think about robots, they think of 2 things. They think of, like, when you see robotics in factory automation. The other robotics that people think about are the novelty robots with the ears and the smiley face and the whiskers, the cat-like robots that are in lobbies and, supporting children in children's hospitals, things like that. The robots that we're talking about, the real work robots, are somewhere in between the novelty robot and that kind of automation, that production automation robotics.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge field. And it solves lots of different problems in that huge field, front of house or back of house, or some transition thereof. A zillion applications. Here's one. Oh, there is always a worker that is perhaps not the right worker at the right physical stature to push the oversized wet linen cart from one end of the hospital to the other. But that person can't be pushed off that task because he or she's been doing it for 35 years.
Mm-hmm.
They're around 60, 65 years old. And that is a workman's comp case away from $1 million settlement. And when I create that scenario, I'm not even finishing my sentence, and the person that I'm talking to agrees and says, I've got 2 of those cases right now. So they don't think about robotics to solve those kinds of problems until we show up and say, how about putting that cart on robotic wheels? Well, that'd be great, but what's the cost? What's the cost if you don't? Like, I'll tell you, the cost right today is $4 an hour. That's the cost of ownership for making your cart robotic. What's the cost if that person, that worker, files a workman's comp case for $1 million? There is no comparison. So it's all education. I will tell you, Mike, it's all education around introducing robotics into workflow. And when they look at it and they think about it, and you're 3 bullets in on slide 2, they got it. Mm-hmm. Now it's a matter of, how do I deal with the staff I've got, selling up, implementation, who's going to be the champion, all of those things. And we battle those and we address them articulately all the time. But I tell folks every day, don't let your CEO tell your COO to go tell you to go automate that 75-mile-a-week excursion from the emergency room to the test lab. Don't wait for that email to come from your COO. Do it yourself. If you get a call from a robotics company, take the meeting. Take the meeting and learn about how robotics can help you drive efficiency in your workflow. And they all nod and they go, yeah, I've got to start doing that.
So, Bob, quick question for you, because I know, that we've worked with you guys for a while now, and there was a lot of homework that was done already, because I had looked at this years ago and some different options that were out there, but similar to probably some of the folks that you're describing, a little bit hesitant to pull the trigger due to a number of factors. But what do you guys do from your standpoint to, I guess, figure out or look at what qualities do you look for in a quality robot, number one? So if anybody is, whether they're looking at, you guys for a product or somebody else, what are the things that they should be looking for to know that they're buying a quality product and they're getting something for their money that's of huge value?
So it's a good question, and I think that it can be as simple as just reading the specs around, battery life. A battery that is a kind of a 2,000 cycle battery, and 2,000 cycles is a typical 3.5 to 5.5 year battery, depending on how many times you charge it, in a 24-hour period over every single day, if that's the the use case. But maybe more articulate is the user interface. In the back of house, in the manufacturing environment, the user interface, it can be what it is, because it's back of house, it's setup time, and you hit go and it just ka-chunks out every single day the same thing. But we find that the more simple and intuitive the user interface is, that means that that company put much more time and effort into making that product very usable. And if they put that kind of time in, they've put the quality into the interface, they put the quality into the unit and the design itself. Look, every one of these products that you look at or anybody evaluates, they should be looking at a 5-year commercial grade MTBF or life expectancy. Um, and if the company that you're researching can't defend a 5-year life cycle, maybe not the right product. If the product looks a little bit on the industrial side, then maybe it was not really designed and meant for front of house for the common everyday blue collar user. And it should not be very difficult to use. It should be, you shouldn't, like I've said to everybody, even folks like at the VA down here in San Diego, they say, hey, is this like an IT controlled product? Because we don't like working with IT. And I go, no, no, no. If you could program if you can download an app on your phone, you could operate this robot around the clock. And if the user interface is more difficult than downloading an app, then it's probably not built right for the application. So I think that design comes from usability and also product, durability. So battery, commercial grade, those kinds of things. Look for those kinds of things if you're looking for a quality, reliable product.
I got one more question for you, Bob, before we jump over to the members only portal here on Patreon. Obviously, it seems like everything's moving really fast these days, right? AI, technology. We talk about it a lot in the marketing industry. We basically have to change the way we do business every other week because everything is changing so quickly and new technologies. And you had said earlier about how someone could have bought a robot for some use case 5 years ago, and it's just sitting in the back room collecting dust, right? And
Right.
I'm sure the technology in the last 5 years has changed greatly compared to what it was when they bought that old dusty robot, right? What do you see moving forward? Like what kind of trends or what kind of use cases are going to open up? I know, we talk about in the trades, the trades in and of itself are probably going to be the last frontier. Hard for a robot to swing a hammer, hard for a robot to, do a lot of the things that people still do, but that technology is changing all the time. So what do you think the next 5 years looks like in the robotics industry?
Well, I think it's not so much about robotics. I think it's about AI. I mean, I think it's about AI and the integration of AI into robotics. That the 1 + 1 = 3.
Okay.
But it's never gonna. I don't know if it's ever going to swing a hammer. However, I think that in the trades, as an example, if if robotics helps deliver staged products onto the floor or on that lot where that building's being built or the house is being built or whatever, um, that's I think robotic augmentation into workflow, and I don't know if it's ever going to replace the trades. But I think that it's a blend of the intelligence of robots through AI, the predictive management of workflow, and then the
Mhm.
robot actually getting it done. Um, Boy, oh boy, I don't know how far robots will kind of you know take jobs away. I think that it fills gaps. It will always fill gaps. And the more creative the application, the more creative the robotic solutions will be.
Mhm.
But in terms of service robots, think of just service as an aggregator. I think that look, I mean, you can't go to a McDonald's without having to, order your food on a menu board. I
Mhm.
actually was in the middle of that action years ago, and I was really skeptical. I didn't think that building these, POS devices for fast food was ever going to catch on. That was 5 and 8, 10 years ago. And
Mhm.
now it's in every McDonald's. Now, outdoor menu board, same thing, right? It adds to the service and the customer experience, and that adds to um, repeat business. So it's all really about not about taking jobs away, it's about increasing customer satisfaction. It's better outputs, not so much replacing bodies. It's about a better experience at the guest, the student, the patient, the customer. That's the game here. That's what robotics to me is about. So anytime you can improve that outcome, I think robotics will be in the mix.
Awesome. Before we jump over to the members only portal here, we're going to get into talking with Bob and Derek a little bit about Derek's integration with what I call the mop bots, because I think I'm smart and funny sometimes and a little clever. So we're going to talk about that integration and what that looks like and some of the things that it's done for Derek on a business level and for his customers on the service level. We'll get into that stuff. Before we do that, Bob, if people are interested in learning more about how they can integrate robotics into their workflows, where do they find you guys at?
Well, they could find us at clearfocusrobotics.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find ClearFocus Robotics on LinkedIn. You can reach out to Derek Foster at Daigle Cleaning Solutions, and uh, they're as versed as we are in explaining robotics in front of house and and how we can help automate things. And again, if it's a matter of patient experience, customer experience, client experience, student experience, we can bridge that gap, and we can explain how robotics will help that every single day.
Awesome. 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 All right. We're going to jump on over to Patreon. For those of you who don't know, we've got a little Patreon portal over there. It's $5 a month, helps pay for production on the show, helps us do some more good work and give. Jump on over. You can hear a bunch of extra highlights. There's a bunch of extra usable content that we put in there each week. And thanks for listening. Of course, you can find us at bluecollarstartup.io is our website. And then we're on, I think, most of the socials and listening to us on Spotify, Apple, Rumble, and YouTube. Make sure to hit subscribe, like, give us a 5-star review, and you'll hear from us next week.
And that wraps up another episode of Blue Collar Startup. A big thank you to our sponsors, 5 Towers Media, Daigle Cleaning Systems, Daigle Fire Solutions, The Michaels Group, Martin Electric, MLB Construction, Bonaccio Construction, Peoplease, and Catamount Consulting for making this podcast possible. And thank you for tuning in. If you learned something or felt inspired, connect with us on our website at bluecollarstartup.io or email us at hardhat.bcsu@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your questions and topic ideas. Help us spread the word by sharing the show and following us on social media for updates. Until next time, keep on building, keep on dreaming, and keep hustling like your future depends on it.